A member of the Kennedy family is running for Senate in Massachusetts, but a victory in today's primary is far from guaranteed. Democratic Congressman Joe Kennedy III is running against longtime incumbent Senator Ed Markey. Kennedy is the grandson of Robert Kennedy, and the seat will likely stay Democratic no matter who wins the primary. But recent polls show Senator Markey with a lead of anywhere between 7 and 12 points. Hundreds of thousands of ballots were already cast before Election Day. Victoria McGrane reports for the Boston Globe that in the final days of their campaigns, quote, Kennedy and Markey focused their efforts on turning out supporters who haven't yet sent in their ballots or who plan to vote in person. And Victoria joins me now. She's a political correspondent for the Boston Globe. Hello, Victoria. Welcome. So what have Senator Markey and Congressman Kennedy been doing in the final days of this race to turn out supporters?
Well, for Congressman Kennedy, the Election Day vote today is particularly crucial because the polls suggest that Ed Markey has built up a significant lead in the suburban communities, particularly around Boston, that participated in this, unprecedented mail-in vote that we've had here in Massachusetts. And so Kennedy really needs to turn out working class voters of color in what in Massachusetts are known as the gateway cities, mid-sized cities outside of Boston that sort of post-industrial places. And so that's where Kennedy has really been focused, where Markey has also been trying to compete in these places to make sure that Kennedy doesn't run up the margins too much on him.
Well, we mentioned recent polls showing Markey pulling ahead of Kennedy. Which voters are they battling for at this point?
It looks, again, according to the polls, which we have to caveat that given the sort of unprecedented nature of the primary, we've never before in Massachusetts had this no excuse needed absentee ballot, or we had a week-long early voting period ahead of the primary, which we've also never had, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, et cetera. But the polls all showed that Markey was doing incredibly well with two groups, young voters, pretty much anybody under the age of 45, and the sort of white, wealthy, liberal voters that is sort of kind of key constituency here in a Democratic primary in Massachusetts, that he had really convinced them that they should stick with Ed has been the campaign's hashtag, and they did. They can hear anecdotally from a lot of those voters, including in the congressional district that Kennedy now currently represents, that they just didn't understand why Kennedy was challenging this perfectly good senator who's been doing a good job for Massachusetts.
Well, with this flood of mail-in ballots, when should we expect to know the winner of this race?
I think it really depends. I mean, all reports today point to maybe even a higher turnout than the Secretary of State was predicting. We had almost 1 million ballots cast before today, the majority of those mail-in ballots. So I think it really depends on how big the margin is. If it's a close race, we may not know until tomorrow. If it's one or the other candidate really, runs up the margin, then we may know earlier than that.
Well, Senator Markey, as you know, has never lost a race in his 47 years in public service. The Kennedys also have a perfect record of 26 wins and 0 losses in Democratic primaries. Is it clear what is on the line here next for the man in this race who actually loses here? Because the stakes, politically speaking, are incredibly high.
The stakes are both high and not high. On the one hand, whoever wins this primary is a progressive Democrat who is almost certain to win the general election. On the other hand, yes, for both men's careers, this is incredibly important. If Markey were to lose, his career would most likely be over. If Kennedy were to lose, that's a big hurdle to overcome if he wants to remain in politics. He has given up his seat in the House to run this race. And it would be very embarrassing to be the first Kennedy to lose, though a lot of, kind of political insiders I've talked to say that by no means spells the end of his political career. Massachusetts is full of comeback stories, including our incredibly popular governor, Charlie Baker, who lost his first run for governor very badly and came back and is now, the most popular governor in America, depending on which poll you're looking at. The stakes have also been, this primary has kind of unexpectedly, I think, to a lot of political watchers, become a proxy war for the broader forces in the Democratic Party. That Markey has really been embraced by the progressive left, by the very online, passionate young supporters of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who were disappointed that their candidates did not make it all the way in the presidential primary. And they took up Markey as their cause. And you saw that with, the involvement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Sunrise Movement. They really see this as a test, as a way to send a signal to the broader Democratic Party that you need to take our issues seriously. The irony of that is that Joe Kennedy is not the centrist or moderate that his opponents have been painting him as. He also has a very progressive record, but he isn't the author of the Green New Deal. He's just a co-sponsor. So again, people have projected stakes on this race, and it has become about more than what's actually happening on the ground. And whether that has a lasting impact, it kind of remains to be seen.